Hey everyone, welcome back. So if you've ever just blindly clicked approve on an AI-generated draft and caught yourself wondering, wait, whose fault is it if this goes totally sideways? Well, you are definitely in the right place. Today's explainer tackles a really fascinating and honestly super urgent topic from our source research. We're going to look at how artificial intelligence isn't just changing our workflows, it's actually fundamentally altering the existential nature of human responsibility within organizations.
Let's dive right into this because this question is super provocative. Right now, the dominant response to AI safety is completely structural. Just make sure there's a human in the loop. But our source research argues that merely having a person authorize a decision is totally insufficient if that person is structurally shielded from the actual consequences of that decision.
To unpack all of this, we'll map out the journey across 5 key stages today. First, the human in the loop. Then, the 5 layers of responsibility, moving into the responsibility decoupler, down into the vulnerability gap, and finally, building a responsibility ecology.
All right, section 1, the human in the loop. Let's look at why mere presence just isn't enough.
Our source research makes a really profound distinction here. We usually treat responsibility like it's a behavioral skill, right? Like knowing exactly how to craft a good apology. But they argue it's actually an ontological condition. Actually feeling the sting of having to apologize, that's an existential state of being. Responsibility isn't just about what you do, it's an ontological condition of what you are genuinely exposed to.
Which brings us to this absolutely brilliant concept called ontological skin. According to the research, a truly responsible agent has to have this skin. It's the capacity to be genuinely marked, altered, or even scarred by the choices you make. To be responsible, you literally must have something real to lose, your professional standing, your livelihood, or your reputation.
And this quote really hits the nail on the head. Responsibility presupposes that something can be taken from you. Without that vulnerability to consequence, an AI-assisted decision-maker isn't really a responsible actor at all. They're just a conduit. If nothing can actually be taken from you when a decision blows up, you aren't bearing responsibility, you're just participating in a process.
Moving on to section 2. The 5 layers of responsibility. This is the operational model of responsible action.
So, the source material maps this out into 5 sequential steps. First up is cognitive. That's accurately recognizing the facts of a failure without any denial. Second is explanatory, articulating exactly why the judgment was made. Third, responsive, acknowledging the harm and actually apologizing. Fourth is corrective, redesigning the system so it doesn't happen again. And finally, the 5th layer, acceptance, the genuine existential reception of the consequences.
Now, here is where things get wild. This is the crucial asymmetry. An AI can totally handle those first 4 layers. An AI can pass the bar exam, draft a flawless PR apology, and totally redesign a supply chain, but it cannot get fired. Only a human can existentially bear that 5th layer. A machine has 0 career to lose and absolutely no reputation to damage.
Which leads us to section 3, the responsibility decoupler, the structural suppression of exposure.
The researchers call this systemic threat, the responsibility decoupler. It's what happens when organizations use AI to do all the visible labor of accountability, the explanation forms, the drafted apologies, the workflow updates, while completely evacuating the existential substance of that 5th layer. The system looks perfectly accountable on paper, but the human decision-maker is totally insulated from any real-world consequence.
The research outlines 3 specific mechanisms that suppress human exposure. We just covered the decoupler. Next is organizational must mode. This is basically when institutions spread a decision across so many different humans and algorithms that nobody actually has to take the fall. And finally, vulnerability arbitrage, which is using AI to handle the PR and the apologies specifically so leadership avoids paying the real price of the consequence.
Let's look at section 4, the vulnerability gap. Where exactly does all that risk go?
Because, the risk doesn't just magically evaporate. It creates what researchers call the vulnerability gap. When an invulnerable AI system spits out an apology and a process redesign, the actual existential cost of that failure is exported downward. It gets dumped right onto the end user, the customer, or a low-level employee, maybe even you. It hits the exact people who are least able to absorb it.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at the fundamental difference between the 2 entities we're talking about here. Humans live biographically. We carry the scars of our choices, and our identities are forever altered by our failures. An AI, though? It's just a state machine.
It simply updates its parameters, tweaks its weights, and resets for the very next prompt.
Listen to this. A machine may store state. A person carries history. AI has outputs, not a life. That is such a profound philosophical anchor. AI cannot be biographically diminished by a bad decision, and it can't be deepened by taking genuine accountability, because it simply doesn't have a life to live with those consequences.
Finally, Section 5, Building a Responsibility Ecology. Let's talk about the conditions for restoring accountability.
So how do we actually fix this pathology? Well, the researchers lean on psychology here, explaining that for a human to bear true accountability, they need existential courage. You need the motivation to face a failure without treating it like the end of the world. They call this non-catastrophizing state want mode. You literally have to want to turn toward the consequence, rather than just defensively running away from it.
To nurture that kind of courage, we have to build a responsibility ecology within our teams. That means setting up non-transferable sacrifice points, roles where the buck genuinely, truly stops. It means allowing for graduated exposure so people can safely fail and build up that ontological skin over time. And it requires legible recovery. Organizations have to share real stories of leaders who took accountability, bore the consequences, and survived with their integrity totally intact. Responsibility in the AI era is not a mechanism to be designed, but an ecology to be preserved. I mean, that perfectly captures the whole shift. We absolutely cannot just design another AI oversight protocol or add more compliance checkboxes. We have to actively preserve the organizational habitat that allows human beings to stay genuinely coupled to their actions.
Ultimately, taking responsibility in this era boils down to one specific act: refusing the reset. You have to insist that a failure isn't just erased by an AI generating a polished process redesign. The failure has to be integrated into your ongoing biography. You have to be willing to carry the history forward. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought to chew on today. As machines get better and better at simulating apologies and generating flawless explanations, are we willing to retain our ontological skin? Will we use AI to endlessly manage away our failures, or will we find the existential courage to actually bear the weight of our choices? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.